Erica asked if I'd come and share a little bit of what I did for, half of what I did for RSA Men's Day. So I don't know if any of you were there, or hopefully not, or you'll hear it again. Just a little disclaimer, I've actually never had an official mending class. I have done it for 10 years at Morton Library, and I was trained by somebody who did it before, and she had an actual class, so I think that kind of counts. So in fact, it was Pat Heck. I think most of you remember Pat used to come to these meetings, and she retired last year, so we miss her, but we're happy for her, and she's enjoying her retirement. I guess each library has a different philosophy for men's, and so my biggest recommendation would be to either sit down with the director or figure out what is your library's philosophy, how much you want to mend, what kinds of things you want to mend, and maybe even write it down, even if it's just a few sentences. So we're not talking about an official document, but just to give some direction to whoever is doing the mending, kind of what they're thinking. And you have probably a philosophy whether you know it or not. You might even have some at odds philosophies with a mender thinking one way and maybe a director or those in charge thinking another. When I was taught to mend, Pat would often say, at Morton Library, we mend quick and dirty. Those are our kind of repairs. So our goal is to get them out fast, back out into circulation, and not spend a lot of time on it, a lot of touches, a lot of fixing. So that's kind of our philosophy. That's what I got from Pat. And I will say that that's kind of hard because you feel like a failure. You know, you can't mend these books. You can't make them whole again. So that's when it's good to have a philosophy of what the library wants. So archival repairs aren't really something we do at our library, and I can kind of say I'm glad for that because it sounds like a lot of work. It's really more of an art form if you are doing those archivals. It's a lot of work, but it's really neat when they're done. I have a friend who works at a library in Iowa, and that's all she does for them is mend. So I asked her kind of what their philosophy was, and their philosophy is to basically mend quite a bit, really work on mending books, and she's had several classes. She uses all the tools, so she can do some really more difficult kinds of mends, and for their library, that's what they choose. So it's two different philosophies, and their library's, fine with that. First and foremost, I see men's as collection development. It's one of those times when you're touching them and you're making that decision. And whether or not you as a person that's mending feels that they should just be discarded because they're hopeless. Whether you feel that there's a chance you could repair it, but you'd rather that they bought a new copy. So it's kind of that time when you look at them and make a decision. I gave you this form, and actually I've never used this form. I made it up just for the RSA workshop day because I've always just done it on a piece of paper, a scratch piece of paper, but this is the idea, and so I wanted to do one to kind of so everyone could see what I was talking about. And if anybody wanted to use this form, you're certainly welcome to. I don't do this for every book. I do this for books that I have a question about. I'm not sure how many of those Pattersons do we have. So I'm going to look it up and put down that it's our only copy. Well, that makes a difference in whether we're going to replace or mend. We have 5 copies on the shelf. That makes a difference, makes my decision a little easier, or the director's if I send it on to her. How many libraries own it? There's a few times where we're the only library that owns it, so maybe we'll work extra hard at mending it because we're the only ones. how many circs, and then I put the since date, because that makes a difference too. You know, we've only had it a year, and it's circulated 8 times. That's different than we've had it since 2007, and it's circulated 8 times. And then I just kind of have these at the bottom that you can kind of circle if you give this to, you know, a director or to the children's library, whoever might be reordering that book. If they're like, I can't find that book, and this is a book we love, so can you possibly try to repair it again? I've had some of those come back where they're like, do you know how expensive this book would be if we replaced it? And so then I try, you know, extra hard. I'll take that extra time to mend it. So just to kind of show you how this works, at least at Morton, here's one that was in our men's, and it's a turtleback, I learned. I did not know. And so this is my sheet of paper. It's our only copy. Lots of libraries own it, and we've had 29 circs since 2011. So I gave this, just for sake of even the workshop, what would our director do? And she said she'd like to reorder it. She does not want us to spend time mending it, but she would like to try to reorder it. And again, she may find that it's not out there, and so then we will try to mend it. Same thing, you know, with like a Harry Potter, is we have 11 other copies on the shelf. Well, they're checked out because it's summer reading right now. So then, you know, you can make that decision. And like I said, I don't do this with every book. There's some books that are pretty obvious what you're going to do with them. One of the things that I do is, if it's like this book is just plain nasty and I can't mend it, is we take a copy and then give it to the person, because I'm just going to discard it. We used to put the book on, like, you know, whoever's desk, and then those books kind of, you know, got shoved aside until they could see if they could reorder it. And finally realized that if it's like a book that's just dead, it's so much easier just to give them a piece of paper and we get rid of the book, and then if they want to reorder it, they can look at a piece of paper. And then, you know, this is an older book. While it's had 9 circs, that's been 10 years, and it's getting yellowed, and so again, you know, can we get it in paperback? Is it worth the effort? And then there's some books that we don't even have to look at because it's just a plain mess, and it's just not worth it. And plus, I don't know, this is one of those lovely books that has all the little pockets and the pieces, and those are always fun to mend. And then I brought one along that, to show you that, like, this is one you wouldn't even probably just mend it. For one thing, all it needs is tape on the cover and maybe a new cover to give it a shinier look. But this is a library bound edition, and so although we had it before we moved over to workflows, it's had 60 circs on it and more before that, and you know, it's still in really good shape. So these are the kind you kind of just, you know, go ahead and mend, because they're going to last a long time, a lot longer than most of the other books. So Sarah, who's my book mending friend from Iowa, I asked her, you know, she had just written back some things about them, and one of the things their library did, or she did, is a cost analysis, because that's all she does for them, so it's pretty easy. Count the number of books you mend in a 6-month period, how much did you get paid in that 6-month period, and they came up with $4 a book, and that did not include supplies. So you do have to think, if you can get a paperback of something, especially children's books, you know, for less than $4, it's probably worth it. Things to do to keep from mending as quickly, and this is also all from Pat, even though I don't do these things, and some of them, I mean, you all know, of course, dust jackets, even though I am surprised how many books come through from other libraries that have no dust jackets. Not sure the reason, but there's probably one. Laminate on your paperbacks. It just helps the cover last a little longer. And then one of the things that, I don't know, we do, maybe everyone does it, is when they first get them, they open them and kind of break the pages. Break sounds bad, but, and then put tape on the very beginnings. And then I know I've seen them, I've never done this, but they just kind of go through ever so often, and maybe like 3 times, and just kind of try to gently break them open. So those are some things to do to maybe keep them out of the mending. Then the next thing I wanted to talk about are books that we don't really hardly even bother trying to repair. And this actually was freeing, because like I said, when I first started mending, I felt sort of like I needed to mend as much as possible. And when you kind of realize some things just don't mend well, and you're always like, okay, well, I need to figure out how to mend this. And so you'd keep them on the shelf, and I don't know if any of your libraries have that issue, but here's some books that, as far as I know, once this is broken, it's broken, and there's no need to try to figure it out. It's just, I mean, these books I know are lovely, but they're really hard in a library to keep them going. Here's one. In fact, if you heard a loud noise while Erica was talking, it's because this thing just fell on the floor, and it's that horrible stuff that just doesn't stick well. I don't even know what it's called. And it's just, it's not, books are not meant to be held by that small of a, have this much weight, et cetera, et cetera. And guess what I saw on the counter at the library? A replacement. And this is only a year old, so I'm guessing it will join its cousin here pretty soon. One of the things that Pat had told me right away is board books that break, you can glue them, but they just seem to come right apart. If you really wanted that board book, you could glue and then tape, and, you know, you could do some things, but usually board books by that point don't look so great anyway. Old stained books, and again, I think it's not Scholastic, but it's similar, and it's just so stained that it's not worth taking our time for.